Hello, good evening. This is me, Preeti Chaudhary, here on a fine Saturday evening, 7 o'clock, with a very special edition of LinkedIn Local India Online Diversity Dialogues. Before we officially start the evening, we have an amazing lineup of panelists who are with us. This is going to be a massively insightful and amazing conversation. Please chime in, please chip in. The comment section is all yours for any kinds of questions, queries, and comments. Because what is going to happen is it'll be less talk and more answering of questions and your queries and your questions. So please make sure imbibe everything, think about whatever you have been wanting to know in terms of DNI, in terms of any initiatives, what is happening in the corporates from a law perspective, what's happening in the startup world, and please start adding those into the questions and comment section of this live. So with that, officially welcome to this LinkedIn Local India Online Diversity Dialogues with me, your host here, Preeti Chaudhary. And time to bring in our dear panelists one by one. So just give me a minute and I will bring them all in. Thank you for that. Hello, good evening, everyone. We are all here. Welcome to this very special edition. First of all, thank you so much for sparing your time and talking to us on this very important topic today. With me here, folks, we have a galaxy of people that have been into the diversity and inclusion workspace for quite a long time. Let me quickly start this evening officially and say, here we are, and let's get the conversations rolling. Before that, a quick recap of what LinkedIn Local India is all about. LinkedIn Local is a LinkedIn property, which is an online to offline meetup concept. The only difference that has happened is because of our special dispensation and all these differential circumstances, we are back online. That is the reason why you have seen us virtually meeting together on a Saturday evening. But we are back and we are back Hang on a minute, and we are back. So these are trying times, but we are all resilient folks, and here we are back again. With that little break, what I was saying was so this episode today is another edition in that same series wherein we have taken these dialogues and these conversations online. And today in this edition, we will be talking and deliberating on the nuances of diversity and inclusion in a lot of perspectives. So there are 4 or 5 umbrellas in which this whole space is, sort of standing on, and different people might take different sort of pillars to talk about. But with that, let me quickly introduce you to the panel today. Amongst us, we have Samidha Mohanty. Hi, Samidha, who's the VP HR at Vodafone, head of L&D, talent, DNI, diversity and inclusion believer, driver, and an ambassador. Welcome, Samidha. We have Prachi Rastogi here with
Thanks,
us, who's
Preeti.
a warm welcome. We have Prachi Rastogi with us, who's the DNI leader for India and South Asia with IBM. Welcome, Prachi.
Thank you
We
very
have
much for
Dr.
having
Major.
me.
Lovely, brilliant having you here today. Thank you. We have Dr. Major Rupinder Kaur, who's a leadership researcher and coach, who is heavily into DNI space in terms of her research and lots of work that she does around that. Along with that, she's a military veteran, so thank you for your service, Major. Then we have Prakhar Srivastava, who's the head of HR Ops and SCM at Toppr, which is a startup. And last but not the least, we have Aparna Mittal with us, who's a leading diversity and inclusion advisor and corporate lawyer. She's the founder of Samāna Center for Gender, Policy and Law. So with that, I am done with the introductions. Welcome once again to everyone right here, including the attendees, including everyone else that's tuned in here. With that, let me quickly invite Rupinder to set a context to this entire evening, and then I would invite the speakers to share their thoughts and open their views and ideas and share with us what they think about this topic on hand. So, Rupinder, all yours.
Thank you so much, Preeti, and thank you everyone on the panel here. I am truly honored, and it's a privilege and a rare honor to be on this platform today. Uh, Diversity has been a passion for quite some time now, and I think times could not be more relevant than what is it now in the current pandemic. That we're not only talking about DNI as a policy initiative, but I think it's become an imperative inclusion or a definitive must-have thing if the organizations have not only to survive but thrive in the long run. So, of course, we have all the panelists who share their views, but just to tell you a little bit about how I got into this space, it takes me back to a time in 2003 when I was appearing for my interview for the Short Service Commission. I remember it was a winter morning around probably 11 or 12 chilly winters, and in Delhi, North headquarters. This is my first interview for any job application, and coming from a civilian background, I was anyways nervous and scared, obviously so. I remember I entered this room, the panel interview room, and the room to me is full with 10 officers of the Indian Army who are supposed to take an interview. And as luck would have it, all these officers from the rank of a lieutenant colonel to a lieutenant general are male officers, which only adds to my nervousness. Not that a woman officer would have made me help me pass through it, but when you have that feeling. So all men, and I entered the room, and after the lieutenant general who was in charge and sitting at the head of the table offered me a seat, he asked me this question, Rupinder. And before I say that, I need to tell you this because we are in a virtual environment, we're not face to face. I am 5 feet 10 inches tall. I'll come back to the context. So the Lieutenant General asked me the question, so Rupinder, tell me, what do you think is the advantage of your height? I was like, okay, I'm a dentist, okay? I'm appearing for a short service commission interview. You ask me something about medicine, you ask me something about general knowledge. What is this a personal question? So he asked me, as I said, and before I could answer, he himself said, don't you think your obvious advantage of your height is that you can look down upon men? And I was like, okay, at that point of time, I think it was just a casual way of making me feel a little comfortable is what I felt, and I did feel comfortable at that point in time. But having spent 18 years now, 5 years in army and about 12 years in the corporate sector, it makes me think, was it a casual joke? Or was it a subtle satire somewhere which was hinting at the implicit authority or superiority of men? Just food for thought. I may be thinking too much, but that's how it is. That's how our society, our system, and organizations are biased, and the numbers, really speak of the thing that we are discussing here today, which caught my and the numbers which caught my attention was a recent report by McKinsey of 2019, where they surveyed 1,000 companies and top executives, and they said, despite the fact that there is proven benefit of having more women in boards, which is not only women for that matter, the entire diversity thing, having more different races, more inclusive points of view, more specially able people, just bringing in that entire diverse point of view, they typically had registered 25% more profits in their annual balance sheets. Sadly, the women in leadership positions, as per a Forbes report, are only 6%. In India, the number is even lower. We fall down to only 3%. And when I say leadership positions, these are those women who are really into the decision making roles and who are really role models for the rest of us to follow. Not a very healthy kind of a a situation to look at. The reasons can be many. The reasons are many actually, starting from self to society to organizational systemic biases to men's club and many other reasons. If you ask me as an individual, basis some of the research that I've been doing for the last 2 to 3 years, specifically around this area, and about 12 years, in fact, 17 years of corporate and army experience put together, I would see the fundamental reason for not more women being there is the lack of leadership identity that is being fostered in women. Yeah. For any woman to become a leader, first of all, it is imperative for them that they are capable of leadership. And we were just discussing before the panel started, some of the narratives that are built around women leadership start very early, in fact, at our homes, right? And unfortunately, those narratives are not constructed around the leadership identity of a woman. That's paramount. That's most important. And when that woman, without a sense of inherent sense of leadership, moves to workplaces, it just the systemic bias that the organizations have just compounds it so much so, and she doesn't see any role models to look at, right? I mean, I can cite hundreds and thousands of examples wherein the numbers are still met, but the numbers which matter are really not there. So the second important thing for us to really look at as we discuss, and we will have probably a lot of insights from the panel here, is the systemic bias that is existent in organizations. And that's also now become a second generation bias where, despite we talking about the last 30 years about women leadership, the needle hasn't moved much. Only from a 4% to 7% is what the report says. So, and the Women Economic Forum says that it'll take about 200 years for women to really get that pay parity and leadership positions that we're talking about. So I think if the timing is right, people are primed. We've seen the economic benefits of women coming in the leadership positions. And this is probably the time to really explore and look at building those leadership narratives, women leadership identity, and targeting the biases head on. So that's from my side, Preeti, and I think we will explore each of these issues as we go forward in this session today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Rupinder, for setting the context, for talking about biases, for talking about numbers and metrics that we actually need to take into account before we can get into solutions. With that, I would like to now invite Prachi. And Prachi has been with a company that has made huge strides when it comes to D&I initiatives from all sorts. So, Prachi, could you please share some professional and personal perspectives on the topic today? That being broader D&I and whichever pillar that you would like to talk about, or if you want to touch upon everything, also fine. All yours. Thank you, Prachi.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, thanks so much for having me here. I'm absolutely delighted to be sharing the space with you and talking to so many people on LinkedIn Live. All right, so I love the way Rupinder had set the context. It really sort of has ensured that our whole discussion will have a proper sort of. She's given us the guidance through and through. So at IBM, diversity and inclusion started about 109 years ago. That was 1899 when we hired our first woman employee. It was 1918 when we had the equal opportunity policy, and therefore it has been worldwide very, very easy to have the right kind of policies, programs, even before the legislation. For example, the 377 was read down only in 2017, and only in 2018. So, however, We had the same gender medical insurance for same gender partners, we had the affirmation surgery, we had the adoption policies, we had the LGBT rights, every program that was required for LGBT plus people much before the legislation. And therefore, the journey at IBM has been long, intensive, and easy. Now, locally, let's talk about India now. Of course, India is a different ball game altogether, because there are huge systemic issues, and right, like Rupinder said, that it starts from home. We know that, and especially with the lockdown now, it has become so clear that women have the primary responsibility at home. It doesn't matter with what level, what position they're holding, and it's not. I'm not generalizing it, but that's how most of the households are built around. And therefore, women have lots to handle, not just work, but things at home as well. Not just things at home, but kids' education as well, which is happening mostly from home. So, what do we do as organizations? What as organizations of like IBM has done is that ensuring that the environment, the policies, the programs, the inclusive environment is such that it becomes easy for all diversity constituents to perform at their best. For example, giving them support when they are returning from maternity, when they are going on maternity, when they're on maternity. Or we all know that industry wide we lose a lot of women between the age group of 25 to 35 or early 40s because of marriage, children, or parents, in laws' care. So, what kind of support can we have? A career identification program at that stage? Because in India, especially, women have a very fragile career identity at that age, and that is why that's the weaker pipeline, and therefore we don't have enough women at the senior level. So that, and then not just work on women, and not just work on the LGBT plus community, and not just work on the people with disabilities, but also work on the managers who are making such a big difference. Also ensure that their unconscious bias is worked upon. Also ensure that the right policies, programs are built in. Also ensure that the environment is such that they understand that it's not okay to have that bias. To make sure that their skin is in the game, to make sure that their performance appraisal have those targets for diversity and inclusion. Running it both ways, not just work on diversity but inclusion as well. So those are my initial thoughts, and I'm happy to answer more questions.
Thank you very much for that, Prachi. I think it is a good sort of food for thought for all the attendees. At this point in time, I would like to once again remind everyone, please keep those questions and comments coming into the comment box of this Diversity Dialogue LinkedIn Live. We have a long way to go yet. We have only heard our first speaker so far. We have four more people to go through. In that time, I'm sure there'll be a lot of ideas already in your minds in terms of your own thought process, your own conscious, unconscious biases, your workplace experience, domestic experiences. So please make sure this is an open forum. Any view and every view is welcome. We are here to welcome everyone with whatever thought processes they have. And we are here to open a dialogue and a conversation. There's no right and wrong happening here. So please do not refrain from not writing anything here. Please be open and please do write. So thank you again, Prachi, for that. With that, I come on to the next speaker, and that is Samidha. Samidha, once again, your views on the topic today, and whichever direction you would like to take, please, personal, professional, mix of both, whatever. Over to you. Thank you, Samidha.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks so much, Preeti. Firstly, wonderful to be part of this panel, and really happy that we have folks attending. I'm sure from a lot of different locations. I think I'm very happy because this, we might think that there is a big step and a small step. Actually, every step is a progressive step, and I couldn't be happier that we are taking this one more step towards inclusion. Having said that, I'm also very happy that a lot of people, it's a Saturday evening and you're attending, so clearly it's important to you. So thank you really from the core of my heart again for joining this. Before I share my thoughts, everyone, I thought I'll just maybe tell a little bit about myself. So I've been in the industry for about a decade and a half, and moved around various functions in HR, including diversity and inclusion. So was part of teams first, then started leading charters, again including DNI. But actually, like Rupinder said, like we've been discussing, it's been part of my life for a very long time. So I'll tell you why. I'm the daughter of an army officer, and if I can just share that, if there's one place where I've seen, it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter what region, what color, what accent, it everything takes a backseat, because all that matters is that everyone comes together, and then there's this one purpose, and then you just go for it, without thinking about who's from where. I mean, I tell people that I've attended schools where I had like kids from 30 other places, and it never came in the way of who's from where. And from there, growing up, I think I also ended up marrying somebody, who's very far away from my profession, and we're very different. Plus, in all my roles, that piece of diversity was something always very important, in any space. And it's one of the roles which has been probably one of the most gratifying ones I've played in life. And I'll tell you why. Because it makes a difference. Everything does, whatever you do with all your heart and soul makes a difference. But I think when you create fairness, and there's justice and there's equality, it lets you sleep very happy at night. And I think that's one part. Now, if I were to kind of wear two hats here, everyone, I'd first wear the hat of you know a woman. So I am a diversity candidate in the standard sense of the word, right? I'm going to wear that hat first. I think it's a two-way street. Everybody's got to walk towards each other. So I'm going to just share a couple of pointers for the women at the workforce. One, ladies, I read this line, it brought a smile to my face, but I think it carries a fairly deep meaning. The first African American congresswoman, she said, if you don't get a seat at the table, you please bring your own folding chair. And I laughed the first time I read it, and I'm actually still laughing now. But on a serious note, if I the first point I'd like to leave women with is, it's not easy. And I can tell you, having come from a family where the most supportive dad and mom, and a wonderful brother, and an amazing supportive husband, I'm keeping all of that aside. It's not easy because there is a system which has biases of centuries baked into it. So you are a part of that, so let's keep that aside. Having said that, ladies, uh, dress up, get up, dress up, and show up. That's my first point that I'd like to say. Don't bother. Like, you just keep going at it. The second thing I'd like to say is, while you're doing that, um, please don't change yourself. I have seen a lot of women leaders in some amazing organizations. You stand the test of time when you can be you. And I'll come to the other part of the organization, but first, just for the women, it's too much strain on yourself in your role as a wife, daughter, mother, sister, employee, to keep changing with the scenario. It doesn't work. It's not sustainable, and you're going to have a tough time. So please be yourself. All those amazing people who have to find you, they will end up finding you, and the more amazing people who have to appreciate you will also end up appreciating. So please just carry on being you. And last but not the least, and this is a tricky one, right, but I will say it out there, give it your best. And I'll tell you why. Every time we talk DNI, there is a talk of meritocracy. Are we, somehow coming in the way of meritocracy? And I will talk about it later. No, we are not. Just to clear it out, no, we are not. But we owe it to not just women, but every individual who does not feel included, that we make sure that the system understands that there is meritocracy. So those are my 3 pointers for women. And I'll end by saying one thing, that I would wear the hat of a DNI expert, and as a decision maker, whether for myself or with other decision makers in the industry. We've been going on and on about this war for talent, and it's the standard line popping up in every top talent pipeline succession planning discussion. I would really urge the decision makers attending this event today to understand that and I have read the, Rupinder, the same report of McKinsey. Two problems, right? We have women across a lot of industries at around a 50% when they enter. It's IT, ITES, hospitality, manufacture, maybe not manufacturing. I do remember the breakup, but you can take a safe 50%. As they grow, it starts dwindling, and then it drops so fast that, we are wondering what happened. Where are all the women? And, why are they not coming back? And I'm really, the point I'm trying to say is, there is a problem. Let's just admit that there is a problem. The good news is that problem is solvable. It is being solved in amazing places. I mean, I know, Prachi shared IBM, and Vodafone is doing amazing things. I mean, I'm not blowing the trumpet, but really, it takes a lot of effort. But it's solvable, and it takes a lot of effort. I would really suggest that two things. One problem that comes in the way is the bias. Let's find them, let's drop them, and then reap the benefits of talent, because you're saying 50% is entering. You don't want to be in that space. And last but not the least, I'd really want to say that you know the goodness has been proven. Let's, for a change, keep the numbers aside. They will happen. It's not a quarter on quarter discussion, guys. It is something which is a long term game. So let's be in it for the long haul. And the goodness is more than going to, it's going to be more than enough to make up for all the effort we put in. So my initial thoughts, everyone, and thanks again, Preeti.
Thank you for that, Samidha. Extremely enlightening and personal couple of takeaways for me as well, there. So thank you very much for that. With
Pleasure.
that, I will move on. Thank you. Move on to Prakhar now. So Prakhar, you are in the startup scene. You've been into, different corporates before that as well. Your own personal and professional experiences around the topic, please. All yours. Over to you, Prakhar. Thank you.
Hi everyone, good evening and thanks for taking out time. When Rupinder approached me for this, and I'll admit that it is inhibiting to be on a panel and talking a topic where, despite all men can claim they understand responsibilities, I can say you can be some are cognizant about it, but not everybody tries to solve it. A lot of places. You are not even aware of the issue that exists. And before the panel, we were discussing, and lot of it comes from where we are brought up, the way we are brought up. Being brought up in a family where my mother was a principal, I saw her working in the 80s, 90s. You start seeing role models early. And then you see how, because both parents all have an opinion, the children that are brought up, they have role models to emulate and see up to. And I think the journey begins from there. It is obviously easy to say that some firm has a better gender ratio or a diverse mix. But when I talk about career, right, as a HR, it is to for an individual also to own. Lot of time there's lot of onus on what the firms are doing. But I always also there's a sizable population where everybody is expecting the firm to do everything. Like Samidha said, and I loved her point that you have to get up, dress up, and be there. And I'll tell you, and in my experience, I've worked with big firms, small firms, most of the time it is who's available the right talent at the right time, right? And it will not matter if the person is from a specific background, caste, creed, age, gender. It is who is available then, right, for that job, and people will get that job. And I think that is my first give to everybody on the panel, from any background, that you have to be ready to take up opportunities. Trying to get a context of startups. I've been with a startup community for a year, and this is my personal view. I'll not necessarily speak about my firm in general, but where the startup is. When I was invited to the panel, I spoke to few CHROs and friends and business leaders in the startup community. Uh, let's get this very straight. For startups, it is very important, one, to grow 10x, 50x, 100x, because valuations matter, right? And you need money to survive, grow, and sustain. It doesn't make sense to have 10 things written in values and have policies when you know you'll not see the sun 6 months down the line, right? So getting that is very, very important. Having said that, I think also most leadership that I spoke to, First point is they are aware of it that gender and diversity are important. Being aware is the first part of any problem, recognizing that problem and then solving it. Lot of startups I feel do not realize the priority of getting this corrected at the very few initial years. When a company, say example, just taking names from the panel, when a company will become IBM or Vodafone, and if they then try to solve the problem 30 years, 40 years down the line, the culture is built in a way that the entire machinery cog that have to be moved is too much. Like Prachi said, that IBM started way before any legislative or rules came in, and that is why IBM became the giant it is, right? And that is where I think the right leadership, who are cognizant that why is it important, starts there. I'll also talk about one diversity, not only gender, which usually a lot of startups have a diversity issue, is a pedigree diversity. A lot of times you see a pedigree, a lot of people will only try and hire from the best of institutes, graduation and post graduation, or from a specific country, master, so on and so forth. Second biggest diversity issue with a lot of startups is the age diversity. See, on an average, if you compare any organization, the startup average age is very low. And because the unconscious bias that people agree have is that people say whoever have crossed 40, 45, they're not young enough, they'll not move fast enough, and we need somebody to slog it out, so on and so forth. So it is not only gender. A startup is trying to solve too many problems, right? Getting the business model correct, revenue correct, so on and so forth. So my only attempt daily at work is first to be cognizant that unconscious biases exist at office. Whenever you sit at the table, respect opinions. Usually, I try and do that in the meeting also, which is called the HIPPO rule, which is the highest paid person in the meeting speaks last, right? And because otherwise, how do you respect opinions? People will miss out and not give opinions, right? Everybody on the table, give them the opportunity, and that is where the diverse inputs will come. And agnostic of the department they are in, lot of departments are seen a certain way, right? If a certain decision has to be taken. Similarly, a very critical decision has to be taken, age can become a factor or pedigree can become a factor. And so my pointers in a summary are: one, respect opinions, walk the talk. Every, like Samidha said, take a single step every day, right? You start doing it. If we are, say, about 100, 500 in the panel discussion, whatever, we're doing it today, 500 will take that step, then tomorrow this 500 will become 5,000, right? Start today, it starts with us. So one is get the basics correct, respect opinions, understand what are the biases, and try and solve them as early as you can be. The sooner you do, then you will become bigger firms of the world if you aspire to be. That is where I'll leave it.
Thank you for that, Prakhar. Amazing insights. I know there have been, various experiences that you have gone through yourself. So it's all culled from, your days with HDFC, ENY, and other assignments as well. So very valid points. Thank you for those. Brings me to again another reminder. Quickly, people, let those questions and comments keep coming in into the comment section of this diversity dialogue. LinkedIn Local India Online with me, Preeti Chaudhary, and a wonderful panel with me right here. And with that, I'm over to Aparna for your views, please, on from a legal perspective or your own experience of being an entrepreneur in this space. And before that, being in the minority yourself in your working time. So, wonderful stories which I've had the privilege to listen to before. And your thoughts and ideas today, please. Over to you.
Right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having me here, and really wonderful listening to all of my co-panelists. So I will actually use my time to supplement what everybody has already shared. I wear two hats. I'm a corporate lawyer. I work with leading Indian law firms as a partner, and now I run my own organization and I advise on diversity and inclusion. And I think we have to contextualize a discussion on diversity and inclusion on two or three pivots. While we do talk about economic benefit, there is enough intangible benefit that accrues to an organization if you have people from a very diverse backgrounds and identities at your workplace. And this is not just a business imperative, this is also a legal imperative because we have to ensure that there is equal opportunity and equal access to people in spite of systemic barriers to access opportunity, and then talk about merit. Because I think merit really is nothing if you have not given somebody an opportunity to upscale themselves and to work at a specific issue. Second pillar, which I want to specifically mention to the audience, is that when we talk about workplaces and we talk about the cultural or societal background that comes, these are not two independent silos. And I will give you a very simple example to contextualize this. So, in your own families or your neighborhoods, whenever two people are getting married, who is the person who shifts the house or who shifts the city? Invariably, in probably 90% of the cases, it's the woman who shifts her city and goes and looks for another job, or maybe doesn't even look for a job in the new city. Now, the same people go back to the workforce, and when they are hiring somebody and they have a lady sitting in the room who's of a particular age, the first thing they will ask them, are you married? Right? So, for me, it has become a vicious cycle. You are practicing this at home, you don't have a second reference point. And when you go back to your organization, you are reflecting the same thinking. Now, I don't think that people when we talk about diversity and inclusion and we talk about leaving people out of the picture, some of it may be intentional, but in most cases, and Prakhar, thanks for talking about unconscious biases, we replicate what we see and we practice in our daily lives. So it is very, very important for organizations to correct the gaps by putting in specific systems to create awareness and make people aware about the issues or their own behavioral aspects on how they replicate the bias or the gaps. So we call them gender gaps, but it could be race gaps, it could be gaps for LGBT persons. We talk about gender, but we don't talk about transgender people at the workplace. So there are so many areas. And lastly, I think we have to remember that our conversation about DNI cannot only happen in corporate offices. A lot of times, and we do a lot of mentoring for senior women leadership, I also tell them that while this is about you, it's not just about you. A lot of us are fairly privileged. We've had very good education, very good means to get to a job. But think of the person in the talent pipeline who does not have the voice that you have. And a typical example I give them is think of the lady guard who you meet when you walk into your corporate office. Does she have the voice that you have? Does she have the physical facilities or the benefits in the organization that you have? Because if your organization will only do a lot at the corporate level and it is not trickling down, you have only addressed the problem at a 10% level because it has not really gone back to the broad base of the organization. And last thing I want to mention is that this is a multi-dimensional problem. And thanks, Samidha, for bringing that up, that every step you take will add to making some change. And when we look at this from a prism of corrective action, we have to look at it across pillars of hiring, opportunities, performance, mentoring, capacity building, training. We have to look at every time you're staffing somebody on assignment. What are you thinking? When you look at a maternity returnee, are you going to say ये 5 बजे नहीं के बाद नहीं रहेगी तो इसको काम नहीं देते? So we have a lot of data, and I will take a minute to share an anecdote with you. One organization, we were doing a deep dive survey. We realized that a maternity returnee took about maybe 6 half days in a month because she had to take somebody to the hospital. But there was this whole aura and perception in the office that, oh my God, she's a maternity returnee. She takes so many half days. So I asked the HR I was doing the survey with that please bring out the half day data for the entire team. And a lot of men had taken 13 half days, 14 half days, right? And that somehow nobody had noticed or realized that eventually, if we're looking at landing up at the workplace, somebody is coming more, but you just assume they are not available. So you have to really look at data. You have to look at it from a critical lens. Even what you think is the reason may not be the right reason. So every company will have a separate issue, a separate data. You have to do deep dive, and the initiatives that you take, they have to be customized to solve the problem across aspects like leadership, performance, appraisal, staffing, etc. Because only when you take a collective kind of approach to a much bigger problem that we are looking at, that we will take small steps to address it. And one last thing, which I, as a DNI advisor, have a problem with, I think there is a lot of cut paste model which has come in. You hear of something happening in the US, and I'm happy that you have some inspiration and you're forward looking, so you have a palette, but you have to customize it. And I keep sharing that anecdote very often, is that we talk about same, medical insurance benefits for same-sex partners. It's a brilliant, brilliant initiative because you make sure that members of the LGBT community have the same benefits that all other people have at the workplace. And a lot of companies have put that out on their website, hum ye karte hain, etc. 50% of them have not picked up the phone and spoken to the insurance company. So if you have not changed your insurance policy and you have put out a policy, I don't know how that will get implemented. So my only request to everybody is that let's just not talk about these things, but let's pick up one thing and take it to its logical conclusion. Because a lot of the change has to be an ecosystem change and not just something which comes in your HR policy or something that is there in the promotion of the organization. You have to really take a microscope, if I may use that word, and look at systems, infrastructure, processes, policies, and make sure that from start to finish, the entire spectrum is integrated to the benefit that you want to give to people. That's all from my side.
Thank you so much. And those were some deep insights substantiated with numbers right there, So it is not something out of thin air or anything. This is hard and black and white facts as they ought to be and as they are. So thank you very much for that. With that, last but not the least, I am over to Rupinder. But just before that, a last quick reminder for everybody attending. You've heard everyone so far. You would have some ideas, and now is the time to put those questions into the comment section of this LinkedIn Live because we are exactly 5 or 7 minutes away from our live question and answer moderation section of this LinkedIn Live. So please keep that in mind while you listen to Rupinder and start writing those questions down. Over to you, Rupinder. Your thoughts, your experiences, your views, all yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Preeti, and thank you, everyone. I think each one of you brought such relevant, contextual, and very concrete point of view. And interestingly, with that, I think we've covered the entire spectrum of, what do we really need to do when it comes to driving the D&I agenda within our own firms. I have if I may ask, Preeti, can I take 1 minute to ask one quick question to each of the panelists to concretize their point of view? Can I take 1 minute to do that? Maybe one minute to each. Is that feasible?
Absolutely. Go for it, please. All yours. Go ahead.
Perfect. So then I'll start with Prachi. Prachi, because you talked about IBM's legacy of 100 years, and we all know where IBM is, especially with Ginny Rometty, IBM's first formal president and women CEO, so that of course raises the bar per se. But you also talked about something very interesting when you said that, you know, you've raised the bar by even taking it to the managers wherein the DNI targets are embedded in their performance appraisals. And that could be one very big takeaway for the audience here who are looking at some systemic initiatives to drive in their organizations. If you could tell us a little bit about that, maybe people can, as much as I agree with Aparna, every organization is different, but the best practices can be molded into the context and then applied. So if you could share around that, that would be helpful, I think.
Sure. So Prakhar, Samidha, and Aparna spoke about so many policies, programs which are there, and Aparna specifically mentioned that these policies can be just in the thin air unless they are backed with data. So that's what we understood over the years, that if we just do policies, programs, and not really back it up with numbers, uh, it won't really make a difference. It'll just be a good to have conversation. So what we did was, apart from making sure that managers, leaders have the targets, the second thing we did was HR is not running with data after business leaders and saying, okay, this is where we are on diversity, and help us do the numbers. We need to get at a certain percentage when it comes to women or LGBT plus people or PWD people or any other diversity constituent. We had to do it vice versa. We had to make sure that business leaders present the data, and HR or DNI enables them. And that's what is happening at IBM. And the whole game has changed because now business leaders are concerned that they need to have a certain number of people or a certain environment to make sure that the feedback in the engagement survey is good. There's right environment. The clients are going for companies more which are more diverse and inclusive in nature. So they have to show that in all RFPs, they have to show that in all client meetings, they have to show that in reality. They have to make sure that there's enough diversity in the hiring that they're doing or promotions. So we capture all of that, we keep a tab on all of that, and not just for women, for all other diversity constituencies as well. Just to take an example for LGBT plus people, you see, it's great to have policies like Aparna said, but we also, what we did was we did a self identification tool where people could actually identify themselves as from the community, so that we keep a tab on how many people do we have from the community. Are they increasing, are they decreasing, and what level? Are they just junior, middle level? No, we don't want that. We want them right at the top as well, so that real decisions are taken, so that real changes happen. And that is true for PWDA, that is true for women. We need women at the top. Just don't talk about getting women in the workforce and just filling up those seats at the junior and middle level people. That is important, but get them at the top so that real changes happen. And that's what we knew, that unless we have numbers in place, data in place, that will not happen. So as everyone in the panel said, that it has to be covered from everywhere. Women have to heal because they are wounded because of the system. They need to heal, otherwise everything is getting filtered through the wounds. Somebody said I'm dark, somebody said I'm short, somebody said I'm fat, so I'm always in, wounded. When I come to work, I'm still wounded. So whether or not somebody is excluding me or including me, I always feel excluded. No, वो इसलिए मुझसे बात नहीं कर रहा, मैं तो, I'm not good enough. So that I am not good enough is so big in women. That has to be healed. Then the other genders have to make sure that their unconscious biases become more conscious. The environment, the office environment, the work environment, the home environment has to change. Mothers have to raise their daughters not to be nice but to be authentic. Forget about being nice. Niceness will happen if you're authentic. It's more important to be authentic. So parents have to change. Parents have to understand that what they say, kids don't hear. What they do, kids imbibe. So they have to stop saying don't be codependent on internet. They have to imbibe it themselves, and kids will follow. So everything has to happen. So workplace is just a subset of our society. We have to stop teaching our girls apply fair and lovely, and we have to stop telling our boys ro mat ya kya ladki ki tarah ro raha. All of that has to stop. Look at fair and lovely. I was just before this meeting, I looked at Instagram. I'm not a big TV watcher, so I didn't know if fair and lovely still exists. And I'm so shocked to see that when I was growing up, I only used to see very, like, girls in the 20s, early 20s in fair and lovely ads. And now I see like girls 16, 15, 16 years old, they are in fair and lovely ad on Instagram, and there are thousands and thousands of people following that. When will we stop that? When will we stop giving respect to the color fair, which is actually just means equity and fairness, and we've equated it with something light color. And black is so bad. Black is Black Friday, black humor, black magic, black everything. So no wonder that we have George, someone called George Floyd who gets murdered. No wonder. We are all responsible for it. So that's my 2 cents, and I'm sorry I've taken more than a minute.
No, that's okay. I think we
Rupinder,
could.
sorry. Rupinder, sorry. Just can I just quickly say something, Prachi? I love that passion, and it was getting me all charged up. It's absolutely wonderful to see passionate people taking up the causes that they believe in. So thank you very much for that. Over to you, Rupinder. I had to say that. I'm sorry.
You stole the words from my mouth. So I was going to start with that I just love the passion and the energy, because I could see that, I could hear that, I could visualize what Prachi is kind of going through. Thank you so much for sharing that, Prachi. And I resonate with all that you said. I think the narratives start very early in life. I remember of a very interesting experiment which was done in the US with school children, wherein they were given some names of the professions, and they were supposed to draw. Okay, so the teacher called out, say, doctor, and most of the children draw a male. Then the teacher said a nurse. Most of the children drew a female, and a pilot, a male, and so on and so forth. I mean, these are things we don't really actively teach, but that's the way it is. Another experiment wherein I think a teacher asked children to tell them how does it feel to be treated as a white or a black, and in which she actually segregated the entire children group to two parts and said the children who have gray eyes and the children who have blue eyes will be treated differently. So the children who have blue eyes will be treated special, they will get everything extra. The others will just shun them and believe them and leave them of any benefit. And by the end of 2 days, you should have seen the look on those children's faces, and how that teacher beautifully brought out the importance of how you should not be looking at people's colors, faces, race, ethnicity, and who can change the belief of these children when they grow up, right? No one. So thank you for bringing that point out. So I'm going to build on what Prachi said and take it to Samidha. Samidha did talk about the power of passion and purpose and showing up, even when you don't feel like. And I'm there with you, Samidha, fully. Despite the fact that we have policies and we have, things like flexible working hours, childcare, and all of that, as Aparna talked about, is it really the problem of gender? Are we treating the symptoms, or are we really addressing the root cause of the problem here? So because as we say that, I also have numerous examples of women who have succeeded not because of the environment, as you also said, but despite the environment. Yeah. So if you could really share your views about how women can really succeed, not because of the environment, but despite the environment, it'll be really helpful. And especially, specifically, how have you really empowered women in Vodafone to succeed?
Yep. Sorry. Yes. So I think so Rupinder, the so I'll talk about Vodafone first. And we've done a lot. We're still doing it. Couple of things that I wanted to call out is, our policies, they're fairly progressive. Our practices, women who come back from maternity, we've had flexible working for a really, really long time. They can extend their maternity, work half day, call out if they want to completely extend it, and all of that is there. LGBTQ, I mean, I'm so proud of sharing. In fact, I know one of my team members who supported me on that is attending this. So shout out to Mandeep. We've given our heart and soul into getting them, and our practices and policies, whether it's LGBTQAI, whether it's differently abled people, whether it's women. I think what really works is that you you shouldn't let your voice quieten. I think that would be my first advice. And it's not that one has to become, and I'm not getting into nomenclature and verbiage like activism and feminism, and it's really not that. I think it's simple. It's about the women or the LGBTQ or anyone else who's not feeling included. Like, Prakhar said that I feel there is a problem with inclusion when it's like, branded colleges versus non-branded. When it's, people who can speak good English versus not speak good English. Whether it's, people who are extroverted versus introverted. So I think there are all these problems in whichever which way. First, you bring your voice to the table. You make sure that you're not feeling down and out. And I really want to call out that, and I truly believe in this. Yes, it's very important to be self confident, self dependent. All of that is fine. But my request to everyone attending this call right now is, we underestimate the power of an anchor. And I think if you can be an anchor to somebody, you have no idea the role you play in that person's life. So if you're a woman, you're not standing up for the woman, you're standing up for the belief that you're doing what's right. And I would put the same thing on not men. I mean, I have wonderful men in my life. I've seen wonderful men at the workplace. I don't think it's about men. It's about a bias. And I really want to call out, we were having this chat. I think it's the piece that sometimes they don't even realize they have the bias. So it's important that you tell them, I came back from maternity, I'm so thankful that your intention is in the right place. You thought I may not be up for that promotion, but guess what, did you check with me? Have the conversation, call it out. How about checking with me? You and honestly, a lot of managers might be, we were talking that they're supporting their wives, they're all these supportive, rooting for their daughters, rooting for their sisters. It's not like they come to the workplace, and then change overnight, and then they become these people who don't want to support women or LGBTQ. I think it's just that the work environment is such, you let distractions come in the this thing. It's the growth that Prakhar talked about, and then somebody needs to get that voice heard, that if you don't do it now at 100 people, 1,000 people, it's going to be so much more difficult to do it at 10,000 people. Similarly, at Vodafone, another discussion that we've had to support the whole women and LGBTQ. I mean, we did hiring drives. And the next piece I would like to say is Vodafone, leadership, the DNI team, which would be, my team and I, people who support are my partners who are HR BPs. We did whatever it took to make it happen. I mean, I was sharing with somebody, I've not facilitated sessions for a while, stood on the floor and covered waves after waves after waves of managers speaking from the heart and making sure that when that LGBTQ joins your team, please know it's not LGBTQ, it's not woman, it's not a woman who's come back from maternity, it's one of us. Like, how is her gender, having a baby, not having a baby, sexual orientation, any of it going to play a role in what she's delivering at the workplace? You look at what the person is doing. COVID is such a great time. Now, all that micromanagement has gone away. So, all those talks about trusting, people have to trust. How about we extend it? How about we extend it and look at what the person is producing, whether you're a woman. I mean, I was smiling when somebody said my dad in the army was from the armored corps, and for some reason, I have only grown up in places where there were no schools. So I've studied in tents, I've studied next to the Pakistan border, I've studied under a tree, studied without an English teacher. Now, if my parents, and I'm going by the point that Aparna made and Prachi, all of us, if my folks started thinking that a girl has to be a certain way, I would have never even reached where we had to reach. So we tell our managers at Vodafone, please don't let your past biases come in the way. You may not realize it, but it's holding you back, it's holding your team back. So I think all in all, women and everyone who's kind of going through that differentiation, you have to bring your voice to the table, and the one who's hearing it needs to make sure that you don't hear it with blinkers on. Like, have an open mind about it and be at it. I would just say that don't give up. It's not easy, but you can make it happen. Thanks.
A quick check on the time here for you, Rupinder. We are coming up with the 1 hour mark. So we have two more time for two more questions, and then we will have to go to the live moderation. There are quite a few questions that are coming in. Just a quick reminder. That's about it. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So I'll take a quick 1 minute, and I'll request Prakhar and Aparna also to be concise. But I do not want to let such wealth of wisdom go without answering some quick questions. So quickly, Prakhar, one to you, which is that you did talk about earlier when you said that a startup specifically is a trade-off, right? At the end of the day, a trade-off between time and money and the diversity that you want to bring in. You definitely want to scale up fast because time is running fast and you need cash to kind of build up. Do you really have the time to embed and design and then follow the kind of DNI initiatives that we are talking about here? Vis-a-vis organizations like IBM and Vodafone, who've been institutionalized for many, many, many years. So, but we also know on the other hand that having a diverse point of view only builds on to the innovation robustness of an organization, right? So what are your maybe one or two quick thoughts around it to ensure that you still have something around a diverse point of view while maintaining that trade-off?
So I kind of touch upon it in my first bit also. I'll start from education side, the sector we are in. Education is a great leveler, right? And a lot of these times, the employees that you are in office have to be in a way that it represents your go-to market also, right? Education, when we design an app, you want to put out content, it is not created for a boy student or a girl student, right? and you make it gender neutral, right? Similarly, all such experiences, when you do that, it obviously comes when, because your target customer is there, your employees are like that. Coming to innovativeness, and which I spoke in my first half also, is I don't want to institutionalize it very at the very start, because as soon as it becomes a part of policy and a paper. And that's what I said in the start, that as somebody who heads, or in general for startups, my ask as an individual first is walk the talk. If you are in a meeting room, ask opinions, respect opinions, and when people speak up, obviously all of this will come in, because sometimes you just don't realize the aspect that will come in from somebody with a diverse background. And there can be, so again, as I thought about that, diversity among departments is also needed. Most of us work in human resources as a department. I share and take up procurement, IT, and admin representation also. And every department is seen a certain way, and some of the reason you are taken and you're not taken into account. Respecting of opinion, once people feel valued and respected, people will come up, and as soon as more people speak up, you'll find the right ideas, right innovation, and you will do the exact thing, growing fast, getting revenue, everything will happen, right? Uh, Small things that come to, and I think that is technology is a great enabler, and a positive out of the COVID times, as someone said, is that now you have to trust it. I came across a very interesting meme who got the biggest change in your firm. The CEO showed 5%, CTO 5, and the COVID time showed 85 or 90. And so it is true for so many small big firms, right? And COVID has made us believe that people will have to work from office. Now it doesn't matter uh, where you're working, what time you're working. Idea is that there's a performance to be met. You need that performance, and now people will find innovative ways themselves to balance their work at home or office, manage kids, and everybody is doing that. I am doing household work. I'm sure you are doing office work, and everybody is trying to find innovation. So as soon as you are respected, I lead a team where most are women, and I have the give them complete liberty of time, right? I know this is to be done today or tomorrow. Give them the timeline and trust them, right? And that is what, again, two pointers: trust them and show respect to their opinions. And it is for, again, for everybody across diversity. If you hear out opinions, you'll get more ideas and you'll find innovation automatically, is where I want to.
Thank you so much, Prakhar, for that. And quickly coming to Aparna. Aparna, you have a very, very interesting career trajectory. You started 10 years into law firm, and you did mergers and acquisitions. So end-to-end business person, and then you jumped into diversity and inclusion 2 years back with doing phenomenal work, of course, around diversity and inclusion with Sadhana Center of Law. Going to ask you a little different question here. Despite the fact that we're talking about law, and we have the Vishakha guidelines after the Nirbhaya case. The statistics are sad in that area also. Yeah, we hear one rape in 15 minutes in India, like, so that's sad. Which of course goes on to workplace violence, sexual harassment, and stuff like that. How do you see that? Is violence at the workplace really a personal issue or an organizational issue? And if it's an organizational issue, what would be one or two things that you can recommend, organizations, so that it doesn't thwart the women's progress in organizations?
Right. Thanks for that. Very, very important question, Rupinder. I think it is both a personal problem and an organizational problem. It's a personal problem because if there is somebody in the organization who does not understand his or her boundaries and who believes that they can impose their personal wishes of engaging with somebody else without the other person's consent. And just to underline the fact that, we see harassment of not just women, we see harassment of men at the workplace. We see harassment of trans people and members of the LGBT community also at the workplace. So it is a personal problem because somebody's boundaries are not defined. But equally, it is an institutional or a workplace problem as well. Because if you have not put in systems in place which create awareness about boundaries, which create awareness about the law, and which also, if you have not created a robust mechanism for reporting and addressal, that's where the problem is going to be. Because in a lot of organizations, and I don't want to talk just about sexual harassment, I'm going to keep the conversation a little larger. You could have the head of a business vertical who discriminates against a minority community. It could be gender, it could be religion, it could be sexual harassment. That form of discrimination can take many colors, and it gets reported to you as an employer. But if at that point of time you look at the revenue the person is bringing in versus his bad behavior, and you take a call not to address it, you have killed the culture of the organization. Because every complaint that is not addressed, or that is botched up, or that is put under the carpet, it is going to really really take you many steps back into a regressive atmosphere at your workplace. And just say one more thing. I personally come from the reform school of thought. I think that a lot of issues of discrimination, of lack of equal opportunity, or of harassment are because people are not aware. So organizations have to really focus on sensitization, putting out a framework of appropriate and inappropriate behavior or discrimination, and then put in measures to reform people, and if required put in requisite penalties in place. Because there are two things you have to work on to progressively improve the culture of the organization, and eventually the management has to walk the talk. I mean, you can have the best policies and the best committee, but if your managing director has a very foul way of talking, it's of no use. So you really have to walk the talk to make sure that it works through the organization.
Okay, thank you so much for those very, very useful quick pointers. And thank you once again for the panel for everything that you said, not only very, very practical, implementable, but really from the heart. You related your personal experiences, you spoke with passion, and I am sure not only you will be the pioneers of the change that we wanted to bring with this dialogue you're already doing in these organizations, but the people who are a part of the audience will not only be motivated and inspired by your sharing, but also have got some practical strategies out there to really go back and implement. And I will close it, hand it over to Preeti now by saying just this one thing from Mother Teresa, which I really hold true close to my heart, which is that
Yes.
I alone cannot change the world, but I can put a stone out there in the water which can create ripples of change across. So thank you very much once again, and over to you, Preeti, to further go ahead with the conversation.
Rupinder, and thanks to the entire panel for some amazingly personal and deep dive insights. So much of passion, so much of practical sense brought to the table that even if people take one point away each, there's so many takeaways right there. So thank you for that. And with that, now we are in the section of live question and answers. We do have some questions coming in here. And the first one I'm going to be taking is from Anushri Verma, and this will be for you, Prachi. So let me just bring it right up for you.
It would be great to know new initiatives taken to avoid biases
So,
in performance of
yeah.
hiring process.
So Anushri says it would be great to know new initiatives taken to avoid biases in performance hiring procedures, especially in virtual environment.
So
I think
what
it's an
we
amazing question.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very good question, Anushri. So, what we do and not just COVID, some things have changed with the lockdown and the new environment. But at IBM, what we do is we use AI a lot, and it becomes easy because we are a technology company. So, we use AI at every stage of hiring, right from when we invite applications to we see where do we lose people. So, let's say we at all levels we know that it's difficult to hire women at the senior level, so we closely watch that. Okay, if we get 20 CVs, and there 10 are women and 10 are men or any other gender, so where are we losing it? Is it after the first interview, second interview? Is it in a written interview? So we closely watch which stage. Is it a in-person interview? Is it that a particular manager interviews and therefore we don't get people in that, or a leader interviews and therefore we don't get enough people there? So we use technology at every stage, so not just looking at hiring numbers at the end. Okay, how many did we hire? but actually right from the funnel to the end, and see at every stage how we do that. Now with the new environment, again, it's slightly different for IBM, because we were anyways very strong on work from home. So currently, as I speak, 99% of IBMers in India are working from home quite successfully, and we are in no hurry to go back. Absolutely no hurry to go back. So complete onboarding happens virtually, and the satisfaction ratio of our new inductees is much higher than what it was when it used to be done in person. So
Interesting.
yeah, to your point, we use AI a lot, and not just for the end hiring numbers, but making sure which channel people are coming from, where do we lose people, and then talking to those people, making sure that data is available. Because data is available, we know that a particular business unit, a particular manager, a particular leader, we're losing a lot of you know uh, women. We're talking about women more now, so women CVs are getting rejected. All right, then that person, we do a complete investigation there, we do a complete training program, and we make sure there is education, and the numbers are very closely watched. We don't do quarterly, biannual, annual. We do like monthly reviews, and business leaders present it to us, and we enable them wherever there are gaps. I hope that answer your question.
Wanted to add a point
Thank you
there
for
to
that. And
Prachi
I
and
would just like to point out, sorry, Prakhar, sorry, did you
yeah,
want to
I
add
was just
something there?
adding to Prachi's point. One key
Yeah.
thing that I've learned over all these years in terms of when you talk about performance and promotion, it's about enabling conversations right at the start. And I think that was part of the question in terms of performance. And I think
Okay.
that is really very critical. What happens is today, a lot of times the feedback comes in at end of the year. I'm not promoting you, or you are not moving up a certain number because you did not achieve that. Again, if we start first, quantify objectives at the start. Have that conversation with your reportee today, and set those contexts early, and say in this 6 months to 12 months, I see you grow at a certain number or a designation, and this is what you need to achieve for me to put a potential or a business case for you. Lot of times, end of it happens, you don't have a business case, you did not meet the objectives. Tell them upfront, and especially in COVID times where people are not there, there can be biases. For people sitting in the panel and approving percentages or promotions, go with that number and say this was a target given, this person has met, achieved, or whatever it is. The sooner that conversation happens, the better it is for the firm to know who to be promoted, and for the person. And great conversation will of such clarity and transparency will lead to a better performance process. What I want to say.
Thank you for that, Prakhar. I would just like to point out Anushri Verma is the decision maker. She is the group HR manager at HCL Technologies. So thank you, Anushri, for that question.
So
And
glad to be
the
talking
next
to you,
question.
Anushka.
Oh, one more thing before I forget is people. We will try and take as many questions as we can. But please forgive us if we can't all of them, because there will be a constraint of time and practicality and all the other aspects. So in that case, I would request you to please reach out to the panelists on LinkedIn via a personalized note and then dive deeper. But I'm going to be taking as many questions as I can, and with that I move on to the next one. And this is for you, Samidha. It is just coming up on our screen now. This is from our dear friend Colonel Amit Verma, and he goes, now that the COVID-19 crisis has impacted, how has the COVID rather 19 crisis impacted DNI efforts during the lockdown? Have we seen a rollback of a few hard-won rights? Samida?
Another great question, after the one Prachi answered. Actually, really happy to share that on the contrary, just as Prachi was sharing, uh, I think the thing about doing the right thing is when things get tough. And I posted something recently. It just brings out the best of everyone. So I think I would apply that to all the efforts we put in our inductions, which are Vodafone has not revoked a single offer we made. We are hiring just as we'd been hiring. On the DNI efforts, we had run a lot of hiring drives for LGBTQ. I know our talent acquisition team is working on it. We are working very closely. So that's happening. I think in terms of the what we were doing pre-COVID and now what we're doing, nothing is getting dropped. On the contrary, all the effort to make sure that, just this thing about there's no physical connect, people are going above and beyond. So, there is too much, there's a lot of warmth, there's a lot of preparedness, whether it's a hiring drive, whether it's an induction, whether it's looking at mental well-being. Our head of HR, whether it's the I mean, she's sitting out of the UK, and every single individual managers, they've been told, please be mindful, keep having the conversations. We ran multiple surveys. We've never run so many surveys, and we were also conscious of the survey fatigue, but we ran it only to check, are you doing all right? We are having conversations with employees. So I would say that some things have become tougher, because we had to redesign and we had to rethink how do you sensitize and all of that. But my learnings, and from what Vodafone is doing currently, number one, when things move online, actually even in the past, content is king. So if it is your sensitization session, if it's your induction session, whether it's looking at your policies, go all out on the content. Secondly, it's time to review. So what it did for us was we reviewed all our policies, right from the learning policy, DNI policy, everything, and we made the tweaks right at the start. So March onwards we'd already started making it. And last but not the least, I cannot emphasize enough that the amount of communication that's happening in Vodafone, I'm not going to share the exact number, of course, but month on month, our employees, and these are all anonymous surveys, they are admitting that it's not easy, but it's not because of the policy. Everybody's having to, dho the bartans and, fold the laundry and work. So that's applicable to everyone. But everyone is really happy about what they're bringing to the table because we're keeping all communication channels open. You can reach out to me, you can reach out to a manager, the head of HR, the head of, Vodafone India. And I think those are the three things because of which, I mean, if I were to just repeat, content is king. So, keep at it, review, and, keep the communication open. For us, that's paid rich dividends so far. Touch wood. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Samida. My next question is directed to Rupinder and thank you to Aparna both. And Rupinder, I would have asked you this first, and this is from our dear friend Akhil Iyer, and he goes, there is a lot of emphasis on DNI, and rightly so. It would be interesting to understand how are companies measuring DNI in the current state, and how do they plan their transition to the desired future state in your research and everywhere else.
So this is an interesting one, and thank you for asking that question, Akhil. I think one of the things that Prachi already outlined very clearly in the very beginning was that any DNI effort that you do, if you don't track it, in fact, for anything that matter, what gets measured is what gets done, they say, right? So if you have really parameters embedded into your systems and processes with very clearly defined metrics to define the success of your DNI efforts, that is the ultimate success. Now, for every organization, as Aparna also said, success may look different, right? Some people may want to look at really the initial, the hiring numbers or the total or the absolute numbers. Some organizations, so for example, in EY, and Akhil would also know that, we have really reached a decent number of 33% women in the firm. IBM, if I can quote, and Prachi, you can correct me if I'm wrong, has a ambitious target of reaching 50% women, correct? By the next 2 or 3 years. So for some organizations, it can be numbers which are relatively easier to track, and whether it's numbers in the initial hiring, in the middle management, or in the senior leadership positions. Yeah. Now the ball where it drops, and I'm talking about women here, the same can be done for the other parts of DNI, which when we look at either, the LGBT community or the specially able people or whatever. Numbers is one with respect to hiring. Now the second is, which is a little more difficult, is something which we call promotion decisions and the pay parity, right? Unfortunately, again, some surveys and research says that women typically across the globe get paid 45% lesser than the men CEOs, and I'm only talking about the top layer here. Yeah, I'm sure there are inbuilt biases, maybe not at the lowermost level, but as you scale up. Now, that is a little tricky to track, and that is the systemic bias that we are kind of really talking about and seeing how do you really build in technology. And of course, technology itself, as Prachi said, is about AI, but AI also is prone to bias depending on who's actually really what algorithms you are really building in that system. So the idea is to really, and that's why this whole discussion about encouraging having teams which bring in diverse point of view, even when you are designing that algorithms and setting up, clear. Uh, Parameters of moving up the ladder, bringing in meritocracy, as we've discussed it from the panel, walk the talk, having performance-enabled conversations, as Prakhar mentioned. So I think there are multiple things that need to be done when it comes to really bringing that D&I perspective integrated with your process and policies and systems. And then finally, as Aparna said, I'm bringing the wisdom here, tracking the data in a very, very objective manner. It's not only about absolute data, it's about relative data in the organizational context. So that analysis at regular intervals, wherein, as Prachi said, if you make the business leaders accountable for that data, it becomes a performance metric for them by which they can be evaluated and kind of moving forward. So I hope that answers your question, Akhil, and thank you for asking that.
Thank you so much for running these interventions with different companies. So over to you, Aparna. Thank you.
I said I couldn't hear you too
Aparna, we
well.
can't hear you.
Preeti, you want to
I
just
think
repeat?
you're mute.
No, I'm online now. I just said, is there a specific question you want me
Okay,
to
no,
answer?
I'm
I
saying
couldn't hear you too well.
I will. Let me just
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me,
Preeti, I
Aparna?
think.
basic.
Yes, Rupinder, I can hear you. If you can.
Okay, I think Preeti wants you to build on Akhil's question only, to which you want
Aparna,
to
can you
question?
hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
she
I
can.
can hear you. No, absolutely. I think, Rupinder, you very well explained, and all the other panelists have also brought that out, that you have to make systemic interventions. And I also think that, you have to have both qualitative and quantitative parameters to measure impact. Because as much as we talk about diversity, I fear that we end up focusing on numbers and only looking at quantitative aspects, which can be a problem because you could be hiring double the number of women or hiring a particular number of women and losing double the amount in the next 10 years. So you also have to put in qualitative parameters, which are also looking at your policies and systems and seeing that is the benefit accruing. And I'm going to give you a very simple example at the cost of taking a minute. You can have an organization which does not have a paternity leave policy. So then it's clear that they believe that taking care of a child is a woman's job and they don't believe in having a paternity policy. But you may also have a company which has a 2 month paternity policy. But are they tracking whether people are availing that policy or not? So I have spoken to a lot of fairly large MNCs where they have a 2 month paternity leave policy, but they tell me no man in the past 5 years has taken a paternity leave. And if they take it from their accrued leave or some casual leave, but they don't want to say that they are taking it from the paternity leave basket. So one company I was talking to, they actually tracked this. And they started saying that when we know somebody is going to have a child or adopt or through surrogacy, we make sure that they check the box on paternity. So the reason I'm giving you that layered example, it's not just about having one framework of uh, measuring impact. You have to also see whether the impact is reaching every level of the organization and it is actually achieving the result that you wanted it to achieve. Otherwise, you can have a system and policy which is there on paper, but it does not really trickle down into actual day-to-day utility of the policy or the process that you have with the organization.
Okay, thank you for that. With that, I move on to the next question, and this is also from another decision maker. It's by Ritika Mehta, who is the head of DNI at Gap India. And I am going to split this question basically between Prachi and Samidha. because I think this pertains to what is happening and what you are doing in your organizations right now. So, interesting discussion. A lot of organizations today are dealing with an interesting phenomenon of DNI fatigue, of too much being spoken about the topic and not a lot of the needle being shifted in terms of the mindset as such. How are you managing that? Prachi, would you like to start
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Thanks, Preeti. And Ritika, hello. Nice to have this question from you. Very interesting. In the year 2018, we did a white paper on DNI fatigue at IBM, and absolutely bang on that we are there already. That there are men, on one hand, they're saying that why there's so many programs, policies, and as I think Samidha said, that meritocracy is also being compromised in a way, when we talk so much about women leadership, getting women in the workplace. Absolutely. So on one hand, where 80% of our employees are men, they are getting tired, and a lot of the women as well. A lot of senior women, you see that obviously they're very few at the top, and out of those few leaders, some women leaders are often caught saying that, what, why do we need diversity and inclusion? What bias are you talking about? There is no bias that exists. So absolute apathy and absolute sort of denial of bias. So no wonder we are reaching DNA fatigue. So um, what are we doing about it? Two things. One is that the needle is not moving in some organizations because it's only talk, it's only policies and programs. It's not, they're not backing it up with data. They're not making sure that the three things always have to be in a check. What are your hiring numbers? How much diversity you're getting through that? uh, Promotions, how many people are getting promoted, what diversity numbers are getting promoted? And third is attrition. Where are you losing people? Are you losing more women or any other diversity constituent? So focus on that. And anybody who says that no, promotions have nothing to do with diversity and it will only be on merit, no, because it's unconscious bias. So anything you don't do consciously will be unconsciously biased, completely ignored, and we will not even get to know about it. So these three things, and the needle is moving. I know of many companies. I know today of Vodafone, definitely. I know of IBM. I know of Goldman Sachs. I know of ENY. I know of Google, Accenture. The needle is moving. So it'll only move if you do both policies, programs, environment, inclusion, and data. The second thing, what we're doing at IBM is a you'll be a little surprised to know that we are introducing mindfulness as mainstream, because mindfulness is seen as something that makes people more aware of themselves. You see, what is the main reason of why we exclude others? Because we don't include ourselves properly. We are not inclusive of ourselves wholly. There are so many things in us that we keep in the dark. We don't want to see it ourselves also, and therefore we what we hide in us, we detest the most in others. And the third thing is that when we don't understand the other person, we either fear that person, and when we fear that person, we inflict hate on the other. So if I don't know transgender people well, I will not, from inside I'll fear them, or I'll, stay away. And from the outside I will actually inflict hate. And it's just inferiority. So we think that people are exclusive because they're superiority complex. No, it's actually inferiority that leads them to exclusion. So that has to be checked by training, by mindfulness, by journaling. They need to do three things. One, watch your actions, bodily actions. Second, watch your thoughts, watch your feelings, because nobody can train you for that. If my mind, oh, like Rupinder said, if a nurse word comes and only a woman comes to my mind, I need to watch that. Unless I watch that, nobody can correct me. No amount of training from the outside, no amount of LinkedIn talks from the outside can help me unless I want to do that. So somehow these two things has to happen. That companies need to make sure that you look at the data, and the data shouldn't be looked at. Okay, yeah, good. Not enough get women getting promoted. What to do? No, somebody has to punished for that. Somebody, it should hurt someone that there are not enough diversity getting promoted. And if there's not enough diversity at the top, if there's not enough diversity, whether it's women, LGBT plus people, people with disability, or any other diversity constituent, that is one, it will not be fatigued then. And then tell people, tell men who say that why so much about women, tell them, when in your body all your body parts are important, but when you bleed somewhere, what do you put a bandage everywhere in the body? No, you only put a bandage where it bleeds, right? Right now we're bleeding, we don't have enough women at the top, so we need to take care of that. And 80% anyways are men, so great to have you there, but we need to have 50% of the population as well. So DNI will not be fatigued if we do two things: data and more awareness. People need to realize they need to really change. And it's not that women are not biased, we are equally biased, if not more. So and no wonder we are getting fatigued.
Thank you for that, Prachi. I think that is in itself will take a whole session to speak about biases amongst and between women. And actually, there is a question about that, but I am not going to take it up today because that will mean we will end up being here till tomorrow, and it'll be just ongoing. So, Samidha, your quick views on this question before I come to the last question of this evening, which is again by another decision maker. But I'll come to that after you have, spoken your bit here in terms of what Vodafone has been up to with these kind of biases. All yours.
So it's going to be a quick one, Preeti, because when Prachi was talking, I was reminded. I don't know, it's some movie where it was, I think, Three Idiots or something. क्या loves हमारे हैं but बोल वो रहे हैं. I mean, it was so resonating so much, Prachi. I could not have put it better. So I'm not going to take time. I'm just going to add a couple of pointers to what Prachi said. I mean, this is, I could hear myself in her. So all of that, ditto, ditto. Just two, three things at Vodafone. Um, every time, not just at Vodafone, even in my past roles, at Vodafone, of course, we're putting in that effort. And Ritika, great question. Every time someone says why for women, I remember I was invited to some B school, panel where somebody raised this question, and they said that there's too much fatigue, and I said, okay, I'm sorry, I'm just going to look at numbers. At least in our industry, 50% join. And by the time you look at any report, you'd look at McKinsey, World Economic Forum, the middle management is, coming down to single digits. And then at the top, because the denominator is smaller and a lot of other reasons, and, maybe the company is focused on senior leadership, there could be more women, but we need more. And I tell them, what happened? Like, if you're saying there's a fatigue, then across every level, you can't just look at junior, middle, and across every level, there should have been equal number of, in fact, more. Forget more, we are not even in the same league as, the norm. So, number one, uh, there is a problem. The second thing that I tell is that, if you look at the number, 50 has turned into not 50. If you, and I read this line somewhere and I really believe in it, if you massage the data enough, it'll give you the story you want to hear. Don't let that happen. I mean, you've got to look at data which gives you that, the way Aparna said, the true story. Please, I think we've seen that thing where to feel pleased ourselves, we'll say, oh, women are back from maternity. Oh, I'm promoting women. Please put it relatively, look at what the others are doing, what is happening. So look at data with that objective eye. And last but not the least, I think, so that there is no fatigue in the system, this is a personal belief. I would add to what Prachi says. When I was growing up, I mean, people who know me, they know that, I'm this whatever, but I was like a fairly protected, sheltered life, babe in the woods kinds. And before I entered the civilian life, as army people would say, and I would wonder, why would this person not give that lady the due credit? Why would this person not do the right thing? And, I'm laughing now that those days of innocence, but I realized that a lot of people project, like Prachi said, their own biases. They don't realize it. It's about them. So I personally feel that so that there is no fatigue in the system, just one thing that you do is sit with the person you think is a problem, have a heart to heart chat, and don't come from a place of judgment. It, in most likelihood, that person does not know that the person is doing wrong to a woman or LGBTQ. I'm just giving the benefit of doubt and try and fix it through a coach, through guidance, through help. They actually may be needing help. So in that sense, I mean, and one last point before I end. We had one LGBTQ member who had declared, like, the term is, and they don't like it, coming out of the closet. So we had one person today, and I share this with a lot of people. The number is, fairly high, but it's not in hundreds. So science says that 11% of the population across the world is born in the LGBTQ orientation. And if you look at your head count in your organizations, do a quick math, it's probably not 11%. So my only last request is, so that there's no fatigue, celebrate every single milestone, celebrate every achievement, celebrate every single effort that is going in the right direction. Thank you.
Preeti, we lost you. We can't hear you, Preeti. You there with us?
Thank you for that soulful response to that particular query, Samidha. Thank you very much. Listen, I am sorry that is a very and everything else. So Aparna will be the right queen with here.
I think she'll join us back.
I think
Yeah.
I think we lost her. And I would not be really privy to the questions that she's fielding. Otherwise, I could have shared the question with you. I think the question is directed to Aparna. I'm sure she'll be back in just about 30 seconds. But while she's coming back, if I can, hear, I mean, maybe and you can think about it if we get the time, we can discuss. We've talked about multiple layers of DNI. We've talked about LGBTQ and we've talked about women, of course, and others.
So
But think about
yeah, I'm sorry, there was a
looking at
technical
veterans as
glitch
a
back here.
community for bringing that diverse point of view. And are your organizations really looking at veterans as also a potential people who bring that not only diversity into perspective but maybe also inclusiveness? I'm just leaving you guys with that thought. But Preeti, over to you. I think you had a question with Aparna, for Aparna.
Okay, sure. So I'm really sorry about that technical glitch. We again unprecedented time, so I'm being kicked in and out of the studio. But Rupinder, if you can find Shiv's comment here, because okay, right here. So Shiv is the head of talent acquisition for Lowe's in India, and this question is for, I think, you, Samidha, because you happen to mention one of the panelists spoke of having diversity hiring targets. Has any of the panelists observed any undesired behaviors or impacts on the organization culture owing to pressure on the business? So I think this is good for any of the hiring managers. I think whoever wants to take that can take that. So Samidha, Prachi, from your research and other perspective, Rupinder, Aparna, even Prakhar, who would like to take that, please?
Actually, Preeti, I wouldn't mind if you quickly repeat it again. I'm so sorry.
Sure.
I was just trying to figure.
No, not
Yeah.
a problem. So, diversity hiring targets, somebody spoke about earlier, Shiv says. And he's asking, have any one of you observed undesired behaviors or impacts on the organization culture owing to the pressure on the business?
No, short
You want
answer
me
is
to?
no. But yeah, Prachi, why don't you take it? I'll come back.
See, obviously, the question has come because probably either you've seen that behavior or you probably fear that the behavior might get manifested if their hiring targets being put. If their hiring targets being put without any support, without any enablement to them, then yes, there will be pressure. because the thing is that it's not just about hiring can happen only when the market has enough people, when the hiring managers are open enough, and if their unconscious bias becomes conscious, only then can hiring happen. The talent acquisition team alone can't really work. They have to work in tandem with a lot of things. And if there's enough external eminence of the organization in the space, that women would want to work for that company. So if you just put hiring targets without any enablement, then absolutely there will be undesired behavior. It's easy for me to say that okay, IBM, there's no undesired behavior because there's full enablement. But I can probably sense that probably you'd like to know what can be done. I think three things are very important. One is leadership accountability. Make the talent acquisition team work very closely with the business leaders and hiring managers, and so their accountability is prime importance, making sure that because when I, as a business leader, I need to make sure that my hiring is diverse. I'll be more open minded. I'll make sure my team members are more open minded when I hire. The second thing is employee experience. uh, Currently, whoever is in the organization, whichever gender, they have to have a fantastic experience of working with your organization. Unless that happens, you can do whatever, you can say whatever as a talent acquisition team outside. The reality comes out very soon. People mostly join because of word of mouth. The third thing is external eminence, making sure that you are in the most important places, not everywhere. Again, it will go into DNI fatigue. If we are there for every award, if we are writing nominations for everywhere, if we are talking in every panel, then it will be DNI fatigue or fatigue of any other kind. But making sure the coveted awards are won, making sure that you are speaking at places where it matters, you are taking the decisions which really matter. For I'll give you an example, two examples actually. Our new CEO Arvind Krishna wrote, after George Floyd's murder, wrote to the US Congress and said that these are the 4 or 5 things that we can do as a technology company to help you uh, eradicate systemic bias. Then we had facial recognition worldwide. We've completely dropped that at IBM. Completely dropped that. So imagine a company like that, and I'm sure Vodafone and other companies are doing a lot of great work too. So it has to start from the top. It has to cascade. Otherwise, if you just put hiring targets and give targets and targets to people managers, hiring managers, talent acquisition team, no enablement, no environment, no external eminence, no great employee experience, yes, of course they'll be undesired. People will get highly upset that why do we have to hire women? If they are good, they will come anyways. So
I think
it
just
has to
one addition. Sorry, Aparna. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't see you raise your hand. Okay. No, I was just adding that, I was reflecting over the question and, I think my husband, who's also attending this, by the way, in the other room, came and showed it to me that, just so I remember. But I think the underlying theme that I hear, and I hear you, I'm sorry, I forget the gentleman who asked the question, could be two things. One, are we somewhere compromising with the quality of hiring because there are hiring targets? So that's the first theme I picked up. Secondly, and I'm thinking on the undesirable behavior, are we somewhere compromising with the process? So I would look at it that it could mean either of the two things, right? Adding to what Prachi said, just one pointer. Uh, I'll give you the example that we did. It is always a first time. I think we've been hiring GTs forever. And, we went and spoke to the business and, God bless all of them. We got support. But there was this discussion, can we hire an all woman GT batch? And we hired large numbers as well. So there were discussions, but, what about, there'll be other good guys and all. I said, let's just give it a go. And my question to everyone, and not to the gentleman who asked, to anyone on the table would be, my request would be, why would you assume that you will be compromising? Because the pond is so big. Like, we are a country of 1 billion plus people, for God's sake. Having more women, it's not like you're selecting from, like, a little place and you're having to compromise. You're not. So let's take a try. Why would you not? So my first question would be that no one is going to ask you to. We've not asked our hiring team. They don't do it. Businesses are all up for it. Have your processes that will look at the right meritocracy, the right process, the right quality coming in. Having said that, before I hand over to Aparna, my just little one request. It may not be at a GT level because it's easier, but during the hiring time, and I've posed this question in many roles of mine, I use a terminology called 19-20. I would look at the person wholly. If you want more women in STEM and more women have taken a break to have children and then they're coming back, how much difference are you really seeing? Like, what is it? Employment gap? What is it? Like, a 2 year gap? Would you be okay to nudge somebody? She's anyways more than willing to come and, hit the ball out of the park. Are we betting on people because we are expanding our mindset and not looking at, oh, why does she have an employment gap? Oh, she's a woman. How will she grow in STEM or anything? So I think it's a combination of both. I know it's a very balanced thing. Get your process and quality non-compromised, but at the same time, if you have a choice and it is an LGBTQ who's grown up in slums, and I know people like that, and has studied under the street light, it's okay if the person is at 70% and you're not hiring somebody at 78. Do you want to bet on that person? Is that person bringing more life skills to the table? Go for it. It'll give you long-term returns. So no, don't compromise. Nobody's compromising. I hope that helps. Sorry, Aparna, over to
I'm
you.
sure
No, no,
it
not at all.
will help,
And
Shiv. So over to you, Aparna.
right. No, thanks, Prachi and Samidha, for very insightfully tackling that question. I will just add one more perspective to it. On that question of why is DNI perceived negatively? So I think if the organization is not authentic about DNI, it will lead to some kind of negative influence or perception. And the classic example I'm going to give you is that if you have a pool of say 98 men and 2 women, and you have put out a label that your diversity hiring here, and you are not going to put that layer of meritocracy and take somebody in, it will definitely cause some disruption in the whole scheme of things. In fact, I know so many women who say, I don't want a charity as a job or a promotion. Right? We have enough self-esteem to say, if I'm capable enough, please promote me. So I think you have to understand that if your promotion is happening out of a 98 and 2 as a pool of CVs, that's the problem. You have to, as Prachi was saying, you have to build the pipeline. You have to say that for every hiring role, I have to have at least 60 men or 40 women CVs. And you have to, as Samita, you were saying, it's a white pond. You have to make sure that your decision is not from the 98 and 2. You have to make sure you have more CVs with you. You are digging deeper. You're spending more time and effort to find the right person for the right role. Because the more you do it as charity, or the more you do it as a tick the box diversity candidate here, it will definitely not leave a good impact on both sides of the coin. There are enough people who don't want charity. We want meritocracy. We want enablement. We want capacity building, and we don't want somebody just promoting us for the heck of it.
I love what Aparna said. It reminds me of that quote which says
Okay.
that any woman worth a promotion would never want a promotion because she's a woman. So, absolutely. Thank you, Aparna and Samidha, for
Just
that.
to add on to what Aparna and Prachi said, we have enough merit. It's just,
I was just going to say that nobody anyways promotes without merit. That's like a filter any which ways. I also wonder why we even get who's taking a chance on their own, risking the business enough to get somebody if they don't believe in the merit. And yet, like, yeah, thanks. Sorry, Rupinder. I had to kind of say that I don't even know who's taking that. It could be a little tilt here and there because I think there's a different perspective, but it's never on meritocracy. It could be a different thing that you want to bring into the boardroom, but I doubt anyone is compromising with meritocracy anywhere.
yeah. And I agree with
Bingo.
you, Samita. I absolutely agree with you there. So just for the sake of time, back to you, Preeti.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so I think that was the last question. We are well over our time. It has been such a wonderful discussion, and there have been some amazing comments. Panel, if I may request you to please, when you go back later on, please do go and see all the discussions and all the questions that are there. You might want to take up a few, in your own time and space, connecting on LinkedIn and stuff. Nelson and Colonel Amar and all the other people, please do reach out. We are not leaving you in the lurch. It is just the scarcity of time that is forcing us to say our byes now. But before I do that, I have to first say thank you to the attendees for spending your couple of hours on a fine Saturday evening with us. Thank you to the panel for all your time and your lovely and amazing insights. Thank you, Rupinder, for the curation support. Thank you, Colonel Amit Verma, for the wonderful creatives. Echo Events, we are indebted to you for the streaming support. And last but not the least, from all of us here, it's a very good evening and a very good night. Take good care. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.